Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Podcast of Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I am still slightly sick, unfortunately.
And I'm your host. Last time I want to be the brains for pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
Apart from the aforementioned fucking treason my nose is still committing, I'm mostly fine.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're doing, because we weren't able to do it last week. We're going to do one today and one tomorrow. So full disclosure, I'm going to be busy tomorrow. I have to wake up kind of early. So full honesty, we're kind of going to speed run this a little bit as fast as we can, so I can get to bed at a reasonable enough time so I can wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, which will hopefully still give DT and I time to still do D&D tonight, because Friday is now our normal D&D night.
You didn't think to mention that?
I didn't think it would matter because I assumed precisely this thing would happen, and thus we would be done in more than enough time to still do D&D.
Okay. Reason.com, New York wants a cut of Counter-Strike's loot boxes, written by Patterson Beeman, published April 7th, 2026.
Mm-hmm.
New York Attorney General Letitia James has discovered a new threat to public safety. A $2.50 video game purchase. She recently sued Valve Corporation, the company behind Counter-Strike 2 and the Steam gaming platform, over a supposed illegal gambling feature. The lawsuit demands refunds to affected New Yorkers.
Oh dear. We may be already preemptively fucked by technical difficulties, folks. We have lost the brainstormer already. This does not bode well for our ability to move quickly through things. Yeah, as I was telling the chat right before both of us got yeeted, losing connection randomly does not bode well for us to quickly move through things, but we will try anyway.
God, I literally read through a fucking paragraph before I noticed.
Yep. Wah, 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 wah.
Okay. Okay. New York Attorney General Letitia James has discovered a new threat to public safety, a $2.50 video game purchase. She recently sued Valve Corporation, the company behind Counter-Strike 2, and the Steam gaming platform over a supposed illegal gambling feature. The lawsuit demands refunds for affected New Yorkers and a substantial fine paid to the state. What exactly is the case about? Protecting consumers or making sure Albany gets a cut?
Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Microtransactions do suck. They suck fucking horse dick. But it is a bit of a stretch to call them gambling, number one. And number two, I really don't like the idea of the government getting involved. Because this is one of those stories where there just are no good guys. Except for Valve, because Valve, I am 90% sure, had nothing to do with the microtransactions therein. And also, Valve has enough of my goodwill that they can do basically what they like for the time being until they fuck up as badly as the AAA games industry has, which is going to take some doing, because my god, the AAA games industry has sucked. But yeah, as annoying and cheap and fucking grifting and money laundering as microtransactions are, it's a bit of a stretch to call them gambling. And even if they are gambling, I'd rather let Valve take my money than New York take my money.
You're not even in New York.
Yeah, but nonetheless, this is stupid government wanting to get paid for the things it had nothing to do with, and thus it can get fucked. Don't get me wrong, if this results in fewer microtransactions in AAA games, I will be all the fuck for it, because microtransactions are shit. But there again, we're in a 40K scenario where there just are no good guys at this point. Except for Valve. Moving on.
All right. Filed in February 2026, James's complaint targets Valve's loot boxes, where players spend $2.49 on a digital key, open a virtual case, and receive a randomly assigned, purely cosmetic skin for weapons like the AK-47. Most players get something common worth pennies, but some receive rare virtual items worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. A single Counter-Strike skin reportedly sold for over $1 million in June 2024.
And while that is somewhat stupid, that is people making their own organic choices, and therefore I have no problem with it. If Counter-Strike is your thing, all the more power to you. Still think microtransactions are shitty and loot boxes in general are annoying. And if this results in there being fewer of them, I suppose that's ultimately a good thing. But I don't want the government involved, and the government getting involved on the auspices of quote unquote gambling is farcical. And frankly, I just don't like, while there should be like limits and restrictions on gambling so that the gambling houses can't, actively rip people off, which, let's be honest, banning gambling as it is currently doesn't do anyway. But yeah, while I think there should be some oversights and some restrictions on gambling so that the places you go to gamble can't actively rip you off, I don't think gambling should be illegal for the same reason drinking isn't illegal. Or, any other mostly harmless to the person engaging in it vice. And yes, there are people who will gamble their life savings away, but unfortunately, that is what we call in the industry a skill issue. In the same way as there are dozens upon dozens of millions of people who can have a drink with dinner or after dinner every night and have no drinking problem. There are some people who unfortunately will drink themselves to death. And while I am sad that such people have to end their lives in such a way, I'd rather live in a world where drunks and gamblers were possibilities than a world where no one could indulge in what for everyone the fuck else is a mostly harmless vice. So yeah, I don't even think gambling should be illegal. I do think it can and should be regulated so that the people purveying it can't rip you off in the same way that a bartender can't really poison you with turpentine without losing their liquor license and going to fucking jail. But I don't think banning gambling does anything good for society or for the people who find ways to gamble anyway, frankly. Moving on.
All right. All right. Valve has made billions of dollars by letting children and adults alike illegally gamble for the chance to win valuable virtual prizes, James said in a statement. These features are addictive, harmful, and illegal, and my office is suing to stop Valve's illegal conduct and protect New Yorkers.
Gambling shouldn't be illegal. Microtransactions suck in a way that's not immoral. It's just really, really shitty. Like, the reason microtransactions are bad, in my opinion, is because it allows the game to gouge the audience without providing a proportional thing in response. I don't think it's bad because it's gambling. It's bad because it essentially lets you gouge the customer in the method of death by 1,000 paper cuts. I do think there should be fewer loot boxes because loot boxes are annoying and they cost too much, especially cumulatively. Don't think it's gambling, and I definitely don't think the state government should be receiving money out of the back of it. Moving on.
James argues that paying for a chance at a random outcome of real value is gambling under New York law. When New Yorkers place sport bets, they face excess restrictions, age verification, and a hefty tax. Valve and Counter-Strike players face none of those requirements. Yet the Attorney General isn't just seeking to regulate Valve like a gambling operator. She wants something far more punishing: full restitution to every New Yorker who has ever gambled, in air quotes, on a loot box, regardless of age, plus a fine of 3 times Valve's related profits.
I support this on a pragmatic level because it might result in games creating fewer loot boxes and things, which would be nice and would improve the quality of the game. But I don't want the government to be the one to do it, and I don't think their reason for doing it is a genuine pretense. I don't think that it qualifies as gambling. I don't even think that they think it qualifies as gambling. I think the New York government, being the New York government, just wants to price gouge every industry that they can get their hands on. Basically. Moving on.
All right. James argues that paying for that raises an immediate problem. It's hard to pay restitution for something without a fixed value. Skin prices fluctuate, driven by rarity, game updates, and community sentiment. The market hit around $6 billion in early 2025 before Valve's own rule changes reduced the market cap significantly. Calculating players' supposed losses is, at minimum, a serious legal headache.
Okay, well, there you go. Valve themselves instituted their own regulations on the thing. That should give you far less of a case here. Because if they had continued as they did in their highest heyday, maybe you could very, very, very loosely and very, very, very stretchingly define the thing. But if Valve is taking enough responsibility to regulate themselves, all you can do is argue that their particular restrictions don't go far enough. at which point all they really need to do is update their rules to comply with your rules in addition to their own, and then this is a moot point. I support this on a pragmatic level because I would like a gaming industry with fewer loot boxes, but on a moral level, I don't want the government involved, and or rather on a principled level, not necessarily a moral one, I don't want the government involved, and I don't think their reason for becoming involved is anything other than a lazy pretense. Moving on.
All right. All right. The penalty demanded is even more revealing. James is seeking a threefold penalty on all gains accumulated in New York since 2014. While precise revenue figures are proprietary and back of the napkin estimate places the penalty somewhere north of 150 million.
Yeah, again, because this is New York, and New York is rather famously lousy with mafia-style thinking, I'm betting that the only reason they give a shit is because this is money that we could tax, that we're not being allowed to tax because it's in a legal limbo where it's not technically gambling, but also not technically taxable. And if it's a choice between siding with Valve or with the New York government, I'm picking Valve. Valve is, and that's the other thing. Valve is not the only industry or not the only person in the video game or entity within the video game industry that does loot boxes. I assume that this lawsuit is going to be used as precedence against all the other AAA video game companies eventually. And while I would much rather see other video game companies suffer for this, because the current state of video gaming is what it is, I also would rather Valve not be the canary in the coal mine, because Valve is one of the only games companies in today's day and age I actually have positive regard for of any kind. Moving on.
And this is not a consumer protection remedy, it's a revenue target, and an especially punitive one from a state that has no problem with gambling. New York operates the largest online sports betting market in the country, processing roughly $2.4 billion in wagers in January 2026 alone. DraftKings and FanDuel advertise freely in sports broadcasts watched by children and adults alike. Slot machines run at licensed casinos. Lottery tickets are sold in corner stores. Well, okay, those last two, that's anywhere in America, really.
Well, yeah, but also, I didn't actually know that. I assumed, because New York is New York and New York is a dystopian hellscape even compared to PA. I assumed that because New York is New York, they were even harsher on gambling than we are. But if they don't have any problem with various forms of terrestrial real life gambling, then no, you cannot fucking have a chunk of Valve's fucking receipts. The most you can do is add your current gambling restrictions, whatever they are, onto the ones that Steam already has. But because Steam is Steam and I have faith in Steam, I suspect their rules regarding quote-unquote gambling are even more punitive than yours, because the New York legal system is a clusterfuck and a farce. But being that as it may, yeah, the sensible thing, assuming you weren't in this just for the money, but you're New York, so you probably are in it just for the money, is to, assuming you weren't in this for the money, the sensible thing would be to tap on Valve's door, go, here, add our state's legal jurisdictions on gambling to your own, and then have a nice day. But this is probably just a lazy pretext for you to milk more tax money out of the average New Yorker. And so, yeah. And you're only claiming to want a reimbursement because you'll probably find some way of taxing that reimbursement, which will mean that it goes from from Valve to the consumer and then back to New York's fucking coffers. And yeah, when the government becomes so greedy and so obviously just one-track minded that they just want more taxable income, they can go fuck themselves. Moving on.
All right. Difference is simple. Valve pays Albany nothing. New York taxes 51% of gross gaming revenue, highest rate in the nation, netting over $1 billion in 2024. On loot boxes, the state collects zero. And Valve may not be the only target. Just weeks before filing the suit, James issued a consumer alert warning New Yorkers to stay away from prediction markets like Kalshi and Polymarket, calling their products bets masquerading as even contracts. These platforms are federally regulated by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, but do not pay state gambling taxes. A win against Valve could create a useful precedent for going after other untaxed markets.
Well, if they're not a state specific business and they're already regulated by federal standards, then yeah, you literally are just wanting New York just wants more money. Everything else is a pretext. You don't care about the consumers, you don't care about principles, you don't care about the absence of gambling because apparently New York is less strict than PA is on gambling. You just want more taxable income. And I think I can speak for everyone in America, let alone everyone in New York, when I say you can go fuck yourselves. Thank you. Moving on.
New York can decide what counts as gambling within its borders, but other governments have approached loot boxes without resorting to exorbitant fines. Belgium and the Netherlands blocked loot boxes entirely. France and Germany took a lighter touch, requiring an X-ray scanner rather than slot machine style reveal animation to give players visibility into what they are buying. None demanded exorbitant payments or required Valve to refund every individual who ever bought a skin.
Yeah, the difference is there's at least a pretense of actually giving a fuck about their citizenry or the consumer in some of those cases. This is just there is gold and there's untaxed gold in them our hills and we want our cut of it, damn it. Yeah, go fuck yourself, New York. As a PA man, I say that often, but yeah, in this case, I think the citizenry of New York would agree with me on this. The New York government can go fuck itself. Moving on.
Maybe the Attorney General really believes making an example of Valve will protect the public. The broader pattern, however, suggests a different strategy. Identify online activities that resemble gambling but have not yet been licensed or taxed, and bring the hammer down. That may fill Albany's coffers, but it comes at the cost of innovation and freedom to participate in emerging digital markets.
Yeah, also, why are you using Valve of all companies as the canary in the coal mine? Get EA on this. Get Bethesda on this. Get Square Enix on this. Like, get all the gaming companies that people don't have positive regard for. Valve is the administrators of Steam and thus mostly can do no wrong in the eyes of the fan base. I'm guessing you're picking on Valve because the other games companies operate more like standard institutions, and therefore you're picking on Valve because it's the outsider. Well, in this instance, again, I think I can speak for everyone in America, much less the people of New York, when I say Go fuck yourself, New York fucking tax society, you absolute asshole. Just because there's money out there that you're not getting a cut of, you mafia-minded fuckers, you'll survive. You'll survive without taking your fucking protection racket money off the top, New York. The mafia was supposed to die sometime in the 70s, but here we are. New York's still operating like that's a nice company you've got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it, you cunts.
Okay, hold on. There we go. All right. Moving on.
Yep.
Okay. It was from GiantFreakinRobot.com. New Animal Farm movie confirmed anti-capitalist instead of anti-communist is written by Jennifer Arsenicino, and it was updated 2 weeks ago. Okay. Sorry. When Angel Studios released the trailer for the upcoming Andy Serkis adaptation of Animal Farm, I was already skeptical. Sorry. I was already skeptical. The trailer suggests that the movie, led by Seth Rogen, not only missed the point of the novel, but turned it on its ear to support the very communism the book decried. However, back then we only had the trailer to go by. Now, independent political commentator Tim Pool has seen the full movie and confirms the impression the trailer conveyed was correct. In fact, the movie skews so far away from the book that Pool has refused to allow the movie to advertise on his podcast. According to Pool, the movie is anti-capitalist rather than anti-communist, which was the entire point of George Orwell's notoriously anti-communist book.
Well, and aside from that thorny issue, which is an issue, don't get me wrong, it also looks like the most lowest common denominator modern kids movie possible. And it looks like, as per the usual wokeness / social justice tirade, they are looking at quality as though it's a bad thing, and therefore it looks like shit regardless of your ideological leanings. They turned it into your average Seth Rogen stoner kids movie, which is a far cry from what they did in the novel. Obviously, the ideological inversion is also a problem, but it's far from the only problem with this new Animal Farm. The new Animal Farm looks like shit regardless of its ideological leanings. And what's weird is, even like ideological woo aside, you could do a sincere modern like animated kids movie take on Animal Farm and still have it be pretty good. Like, there are movies that very much take inspiration from stuff like Animal Farm that you could have used that would actually have given your movie some semblance of class, i.e. the first thing that popped in my head was Chicken Run. If anyone remembers the old Aardman animation movie Chicken Run, the stop motion one.
That really took a lot for you to say, huh?
Again, my nose is committing mutiny, and it's affecting my voice's ability to be a thing. But yeah. Obviously, the ideological inversion is just the cherry on top of the shit sundae. But let's not sit here and act like if this movie had stayed anti-communist, it would be fine. Its absence of decrying communism is definitely a red flag, but it's certainly not the only red flag in the new Animal Farm. Moving on.
Sorry, I went to grab a drink real quick.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Announcement: Timcast IRL has been asked to run ads promoting Animal Farm next week, which is being distributed by Angel Studios. Angel Studios has done tremendous work in the past, and I have been a fan for some time. However, I'm rejecting these ads outright, as the film is it's just an excerpt from its post. Angel Studios is a well-known Christian outlet run by three brothers, Neil, Jeffrey, and Jordan Harmon. The directors behind the campy Squatty Potty commercial. They turned their success into a crowdsourced studio that is focused on conservative Christian entertainment, including the Neil McDonough-led movie and series Homeland, and the animated style Gabriel and the Guardians, a children's cartoon led by the voice talent of Johnny Young Bosch, former Power Ranger and voice of Vash the Stampede, in the English dub of Trigon. Let's also not forget David.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that Angel Studios of all studios was willing to distribute this movie, because by all accounts the movie was already done and made before they went shopping studios to release it. I'm guessing, and this is just my take on things, that they were so excited to get a relatively big budget movie with relatively, famous actors in it, that they didn't really think much about the quality. But yeah, given that Angel Studios is one of those like Christian propaganda adjacent sort of things, and like this article says, has explicit conservative and Christian leanings, how did no one look at Seth Rogen doing a ideologically inverted version of Animal Farm and go, what in the fuck are we doing? We're a quote unquote Christian conservative company that's releasing an anti-capitalist version of Animal Farm with toilet humor and Seth Rogen style stoner humor. Like, who in Angel Studios was like, that sounds like a good idea? Because if like the BBC or Disney released something like this, that could almost make sense. Or how even if like Illumination released it, it would almost make sense, because Illumination tends to go for like the lowest possible denominator of kids movie. But for an explicitly Christian, explicitly conservative company like Angel Studios to release an anti-capitalist, toilet humor and fart joke infused version of Animal Farm, it's the most fucking bizarro world thing possible. Be like if Nefarious was released by, I'm trying to think of what the like furthest left consortium of like production companies is. Be like if trying to think. Be like if the Dogma 95 movie really, or the Dogma 95 company released Nefarious, basically. That's how far into bizarro world we are, basically, at this point. Moving on.
All right, Angel Studios running away from its conservative roots. With Animal Farm, Angel Studios seems to be running away from its conservative roots. Aside from a cast which includes well-known left-wing activist Seth Rogen, key character Snowball is played by trans thespian Laverne Cox. So, okay, to be fair, I've not looked too much at Angel Studios, but from what I've gathered, they're not. While they have those leanings and stuff, they're not like assholes about it. Like
they're
like
higher quality than most like Christian propaganda sorts of stuff. They're not pure flicks, for example. They're not the sorts of people that release like God's Not Dead and War Room and that kind of shit. As I recall, didn't Angel Studios, weren't they also the ones that released Sound of Freedom?
Sound of Freedom. Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to see. Okay. Yeah, they did.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting the company wrong. But yeah, even I, a gay Bernie bro, with a physical disability that qualifies me for government disability, can admit that while I am neither Christian nor particularly conservative, they have done movies that I have liked, which is more than I can say for stuff like PureFlix. Being that as it may, this is remarkably surprising. Now, mind you, I don't necessarily always associate what the actor thinks with the quality of the movie, because what actors do in the privacy of their own personal lives, I could not give a fuck about, as long as it doesn't ever impact what's going on screen. However, it seems like Andy Serkis and Seth Rogen, again, my voice is fucking mutinying today, didn't leave their politics at the door and try to do a just good adaptation of Animal Farm. They put their politics as much in the thing as they possibly could. And again, what's more, because while George Orwell would be spinning in his grave at the idea of an anti-capitalist Animal Farm to begin with, and he would, and he will, it's more fundamental than that, because not only did they make an anti-capitalist version of Animal Farm, which is stupid, despite me being a Bernie bro, I am not anti-capitalist, but even aside from that, like, you can see it from space style stupidity. What's with all the fart jokes and toilet humor and lowest common denominator stoner gags? That not only is that beneath Animal Farm, it's mostly beneath Angel Studios, because my biases against Christianity aside, they're usually really good at doing like innocent and wholesome pretty well. And this is again, it's like an Angel Studios movie from Bizarro World. It is literally everything Angel Studios was founded to not be. That's why I think it might just have been as simple as we can have a big budget movie with big budget stars in it. But not to get all, doomsaying and religious sounding about this, but according to your own standards, folks from Angel Studios, is this not literally what constitutes selling your soul on a moral level?
Are you done?
Yeah. Moving on.
All right. It's not objectionable by itself, but it is a surprising move for a Mormon film company whose target audience is Christian conservatives. Additionally, the movie is clearly targeted to and being marketed for children, with adorable animated animals voiced by other celebrities like Woody Harrelson and Glenn Close. However, Animal Farm is definitely not a kid's book. It is not suitable as a family film the way this version is being sold.
Now, again, there are ways you could do Animal Farm similar to like a Watership Down or a Secret of NIMH, those sorts of dark, this will fuck up the kids' minds, but it will teach them something worthwhile. And in fact, there's an animated version made in the 50s that is at least kid adjacent that can work. And there's also a BBC version from the 90s that's at least trying to keep to the source material while also being at least kid friendly-ish. And you could definitely do a more timeless, like Leica Studios or Aardman Animation style of Animal Farm that could work. Something along the lines of like a Wes Anderson kids movie like Fantastic Mr. Fox or Isle of Dogs, something like, again, Leica Studios or Aardman Animation in their heyday. You could do that in a kids movie format and still have it work in a like Watership Down Secret of NIMH kind of way. But that's not what they did. They didn't even Illumination Animation it, because Illumination, dare I say it, has higher standards than the standard we're currently in. The standard we're currently in makes Illumination look like prime era Pixar. Also, I will put a giant fucking wedge size asterisk beside adorable animated creatures, because the animation style sucks and is massively unappealing, but it's not even unappealing in a this is supposed to look sinister and grandiose way. It's just
Bland.
It's bland and gross and ugly. Moving on.
Additionally, the movies. Sorry. However, the most glaring controversy is that the villains are obnoxious caricatures of famous billionaires, most notably Elon Musk, and that the movie decries capitalism by using the same storyline George Orwell used to criticize Soviet socialism and Stalinism in his 1945 book. The irony is that the book is largely about the use of propaganda to tell people what to think, and the adaptation is being released on May 1st, 2026, and actually is propaganda more in line with a left-leaning Hollywood than a conservative Christian distributor. Even the distribution date is somewhat of an attack on the author of the work, as May 1st was the date of a revolution in Spain that was a significant event in Orwell's life, about which he wrote a memoir.
I don't think that's a deliberate choice. I'm going to be somewhat charitable and say that that was a complete coincidence. Because you don't always get complete control over your release dates in Hollywood. I'm going to be very charitable and say that that's just a coincidence. That being said, everything else they just said is also true. And yes, making a version of Animal Farm where capitalism and the humans are worse than the pigs and communism is to not just miss but utterly invert the point. But even so, even without taking that into account, loading, early 20th century George Orwell down with fart jokes and stoner humor and toilet humor, a la like Sausage Party. Actually, no. I will say this. Sausage Party, for all its faults and for all its, Reddit tier atheism, even though the movie itself is more apotheistic because the gods the food worship do actually, exist. But for all Sausage Party's Reddit tier atheism, this looks infinitely worse. This looks like the kind of worst case scenario that the Christian, like, fundamentalist straw man would look at Sausage Party and see through their own lens. And yet this is a Christian conservative company releasing like Antifa's version of Animal Farm for stoner 13-year-olds. It's just How does this exist? And more importantly, why does this exist? Moving on.
Angel Studios may have aggravated its conservative donors to get Animal Farm made. Angel Studios execs Jordan and Jeffrey Hammond leaped to defend the movie, claiming it was anti-communist, anti-cronyist. Jeffrey even went on Temple's show to respond to his allegations directly. However, the casting, the hints from the trailer, and the testimony of Tim Pool have all raised the eyebrows of many viewers and called attention to the lack of screening by the Angel Guild. Angel Guild is a group of donors who help crowdsource the movies Angel Studios produces. Each movie is supposed to be voted on by the many members of the guild, but several responded to various threads about the Animal Farm controversy by many they had not known about the vote or been offered a screening of the movie.
And I am not a Christian. I am a polytheist and an occultist. But by your own standards, Angel Studios, is this not the very definition of selling your soul in order to gain the world, or at least theoretically gain the world? I don't think you're going to, because this movie is likely to flop harder than Seth Rogen in the middle of a pool. But this does feel distinctly Faustian in its betrayal of everything you and your supporters believe is good and pure and moral and righteous. And from a artistic perspective, which is the part that I care more about, it just seems like you took everything wrong with Hollywood and distilled it into one movie. You've got the deliberate inversion of source materials in order to alienate and spite the fans thereof. You've got the shunning or deliberate destruction of beauty standards. You've got the lowest possible common denominator definition of what the masses want. You've got the attempt to be heavy-handed in your attempt to preach at them rather than with them or to them. And you've got modern artistic egos getting in the way of source material and audience to such a degree that this is now a black hole of artistic value. It makes the world worse simply by existing in it. I hope whatever Andy Serkis and Seth Rogen paid you to release this, Angel Studios, I hope it was worth it, because it might cost you your entire company when all is said and done. Or it might net you a new audience, the fucking room temperature IQ Antifa members. Because Antifa members with room temperature IQs are pretty much the only people I can imagine would like this. And even they would like it not for what it is, but for what it's beating them over the head with. Moving on.
All right. Sorry, just give me a sec. Alright, so this is from themercy.com. Failed filmmaker turned YouTube grifter is mad. People like to see themselves from him and his grift. Written by Teresa Gray, published April 7th, 2026.
The Mary Sue. Reminds me of the old days.
The Critical Drinker is upset with Dungeon Crawler Carl's author, and it's because Matt Dinniman wants to distance himself from the streamer. A 9-month-old quote from Reddit is making the rounds after social media got a hold of it again. As Dungeon Crawler Carl gets ready to begin production, folks are remembering the time that the author had some thoughts about Critical Drinker. Dinniman was not exactly shy with his commentary. I regret that my books have an association whatsoever with him. I hope one day to have his part in book 3 removed altogether. The author elaborated, it's a distraction, and the only edgelord douchebag I want people to think of when they read my books is the AI itself.
Okay. Now, mind you, we have had our criticisms of Critical Drinker every now and again. Because every now and again, the EFAP crowd tends to get a little bit too punch drunk at the forefront of the culture war and seems to have no standards or a complete fucking clusterfuck of standards that make no fucking sense.
Right back.
That being said, we are still closer to the EFAP crowd than we are to the social justice brats. And being that as it may, the Critical Drinker and Mahler and Rags and Gary and Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers and all the rest of them are more indicative of the grassroots of the audience than anything Hollywood has been doing for the last decade at least. And so, despite my personal disagreements with Critical Drinker on things like Multiverse of Madness and or Agatha All Along, which were both better than the EFAP crowd gave them credit for at the time, and their attempts to frame them as though they were equivalent to She-Hulk, Velma, or The Acolyte were false. But being that as it may, he's still ostensibly on my side. And if it's a choice between defending somebody like the Critical Drinker or defending somebody like modern day Disney, I will defend the Critical Drinker every time. And being as this is the Mary Sue, and the Mary Sue is a wretched hive of scum and journalists, and given the history we have with the Mary Sue and their attempts to unperson people because of political disagreements and ideological short-sightedness, I'm betting they're going to strawman and demonize the Critical Drinker, not because he can occasionally get stuff wrong or because he occasionally gets a little bit too punch drunk in the middle of the culture wars, but because they don't agree with his ideology at all, which is just them being ideologically captured feminists and denying reality, as you do. Moving on.
Okay, first we're gonna say Face, the Critical Drinker, responded on social media. Lol, that's interesting since he was very excited to work with me and claimed to be a big fan when it benefited him. Critical Drinker posted. Now that he's trying to break into TV, suddenly he's filled with regret. He continued, good luck sucking all that Hollywood dick, but I hope it's worth it.
Okay, now that all the throat clearing has gotten out of the way, this does seem like a betrayal. A betrayal of Critical Drinker from somebody who at least at one point claimed to agree with him. And betrayal is bad no matter who is doing it. And based on the apology we just read through, the I disavow apology the guy just made, it doesn't feel like a genuine monkey touches the monolith moment. It feels like he wants to get somewhere in the establishment of Hollywood and like he's willing to sell out his own opinions in order to do so. In which case, fuck this guy. He, not the Critical Drinker, is the more guilty of being an opportunistic grifter in this instance. And by the way, if you're willing to sell everything you are, everything you have, and everything you will ever be to Hollywood, just ask the victims of Me Too how well that works. Because many people have sold much more of their souls to Hollywood, and we're only just now realizing the depths of Epsteining that goes on there. I will, however, also point out because this is a neat parallel in my side of the culture war, which is the, Comicsgate adjacent side of the culture war. This guy feels a lot like EBS and John Malin used to, whereby they said what they needed to say to get into Comicsgate's good graces, only to try to take it over and usurp it for their own ends when the grassroots populist fandom campaigning and actual audience speaking on their own behalf got in their way. So yeah, I am familiar with this kind of backstabbery. It's one of the reasons I hate Ethan Van Sciver. And I feel bad for Critical Drinker because this kind of betrayal does not feel good. Moving on.
Critical Drinker and some beef with Dungeon Crawler or Carl, author. This is the second time in so many weeks that Critical Drinker has found himself at the center of some nerd drama. Project Hail Mary author Andy Weir got into some hot water for jokes about Star Trek on the streamer's channel. He slagged off modern franchise entries, and the internet saw that as disrespectful. In our opinion, it was a bit much, especially when you consider where he was speaking. But the Project Hail Mary scribe decided to apologize on social. Weir said on social media, open letter to Alex Kurtzman, "Hey, Alex, Andy Weir here. I'm posting to apologize about stuff I said on the Critical Drinkers podcast. I feel like my quotes were taken out of context as delicious sound bites." He continued, "Hope you saw the other parts where I said how much I like you as a person and what a nice guy you are. Also, I like Star Trek Strange New Worlds and Star Trek Lower Decks."
Unlike Dungeon Crawler dude there, this does not feel either like a betrayal or even necessarily a meaningful apology. This sounds like the social justice side of the internet going after Andy Weir actively because of him saying true things that happen to coincide with some things the Critical Drinker says, and then for the sake of the bottom line of Project Hail Mary, doing the most perfunctory and get off my back apology he could. I'm not, unlike Dungeon Crawler Carl, I'm not mad at Andy Weir because I think both he and Critical Drinker realize that their conversation was more legitimate than the apology that Andy Weir is now being forced to give so that they won't cancel him for it. And unfortunately, Andy, and this is the irony of how these people work, that apology did jack shit nothing. That being said, you would have been okay had you not given it, because these people aren't actually an organic reflection of how people in the fandom actually think. They are ideologically possessed twats trying to co-opt fandom as a weapon. I understand, however, that, a man has to, make sure he can still pay his bills at the end of the day, and that you would still like to have some connection to Hollywood. And in that being the case, this is the best apology he could have given, because he never actually disavowed anything that he said to the Critical Drinker. He didn't even give a meaningful admission of wrongdoing. What he did was point out accurately that the people slandering him took those things out of context and tried to frame them as bad things when they weren't. Moving on.
I'm trying to be funny, but in retrospect, it comes off as disrespectful and mean, so I'm sorry for that. Weir admitted. I was also trying to be self-deprecating when I said, but they didn't like my pitch, so fuck them. But out of context, it can read like I actually mean it.
Meant it. God forbid man tries to be funny in 2026. This bodes exceedingly well for Andy Weir. Although Andy Weir is more than smart enough to realize what he did there. And this just goes to prove how awesome Andy Weir is and why basically anything of his that ever gets turned into a movie I am seeing. Because like The Martian was already one of my favorite optimistic sci-fi movies of the last couple decades. And Project Hail Mary just sealed the deal. Granted, at least half of the awesomeness of Project Hail Mary does also go to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, because Phil Lord and Chris Miller also have more than earned my loyalty in terms of anything they make. I will see no matter what it is, because every time they make something, it's awesome. That being doubly said, however, whoever had the brilliant idea to combine Andy Weir source material with Phil Lord and Chris Miller deserves a raise. I hope whoever had that idea at, I think Amazon are the ones that released Project Hail Mary. Whoever had that idea, though, give them a raise. They have earned it. And frankly, Phil Lord and Chris Miller should have right of first refusal on all future Andy Weir projects, because Andy Weir and the Millers working together, or Lord and Miller working together, is a match made in heaven, and I hope they continue to do so for the foreseeable future, or until they don't want to anymore, pretty much. Moving on.
All right. Okay. So this is from ibtimes.co.uk. Who is Harry Dresden? The Black Magic links explained, and why he's being tied to a viral Ring camera meltdown. Written by Vinay Patel, published April 13th, 2026.
Okay, so for those that don't know, someone had a mental breakdown on a Ring cam and was trying to LARP as Harry when he did it. That's the long and short of this incident. I, surprising no one, given how often I sing the praises of Jim Butcher and the Dresden Files, more specifically, I am a massive Harry Dresden fan. I am a massive Dresden Files fan. My spirituality was actively influenced by Dresden Files because it got me into working with the Fae, specifically Queen Mab. All hail the Winter Queen. That being said, as a Dresden Files fan, I can tell you that literally every Dresden Files fan acknowledges that Harry is a dork and an idiot. So I'm not even sure if this guy is a Dresden Files fan, because I have never known a Dresden Files fan who will not, despite loving Harry, and we love him, acknowledge. And to be fair, also, Harry is very self-depreciating and self-aware in the narration about this. Harry knows that he's a dork and an idiot, and it frequently bites him in the ass that he is a dork and an idiot. So I'm not sure why this mental patient latched on to Harry Dresden as his definition of badassery, because while Harry does have his badass moments, he's also a dork and an idiot. A lovable dork and a lovable idiot, but he's a dork and an idiot. And we love him for his dorky idiocy, but he's a dork and an idiot. And so no one should be looking at Harry Dresden like this kind of badass role model. He's not fucking John Wick, is what I'm saying. Moving
on. Doorbell camera clip featuring a man who identifies as Harry Dresden has taken social media by storm. Filmed in Fairfield, California on April 7th, the footage captures the moment he lost his temper on a stranger's porch. After introducing himself as Harry Dresden, he began pursuing the resident for information on his daughter's whereabouts. When the resident stayed silent, Harry Dresden shouted that he would kick the door down, finish it all while demanding to know who else was inside if everyone was safe.
Okay, and again, my question begins where LARPing ends and schizophrenia begins. Because even if he were LARPing as Harry Dresden, again, Harry has a very self-depreciating awareness of his dorky idiocy moments. So if this person is a Dresden Files fan, they haven't been paying much attention. Because while Harry does have his occasional badass moments, he's also a dork. And he knows he's a dork. He frequently bashes his own head against the metaphorical wall, going, "Why am I such an idiot? Why am I such an idiot? Why am I such an idiot?" And to be fair, as any genuine fan of the Dresden Files can tell you, we also frequently have that expression on our faces as Harry tries and fails horribly to be a badass and mucks it up completely. Moving on.
The vital doorstep confrontation in Fairfield. The dredging footage captures the man shouting as he destroyed the doorbell and kicked out the entrance, ordering the resident to open up. At one stage, Harry claimed to live nearby, a statement the homeowner quickly debunked by noting he had never seen the man before the incident. The individual in the trending footage is not actually named Harry Dresden. Okay.
Well, no shit. Harry is the protagonist of the Dresden Files, and this guy is clearly having some kind of psychotic break. And I say a psychotic break rather than LARPing, because literally anyone who knows anything about Dresden Files knows that while we love Harry, Harry is a dork. We often love him for his dorkiness, and he frequently beats himself up about what a dork he is. Like what again? While Harry has his badass moments, 2/3 of the time, Harry tries to be badass and fucks it up completely. And we're talking about a character that is terminally pop culture savvy, to the point that while he's waiting to be eaten by something, he will make Looney Tunes references, which will frequently confuse the earnestly badass fucking immortal creatures that are trying to fucking eat him. Which is part of the point, but that's neither here nor that. My point is that a genuine Harry Dresden fan knows not to idealize Harry Dresden because Harry Dresden is a bit of a dork. We love him for his dorkiness, but a dork he remains. Moving on.
Staying in custody by Fairfield police on April 7th and identified as Jason Thomas Nichols. Notably, Harry Dresden is actually the fictional lead of Jim Butcher's Dresden Files book series, where he is portrayed as a wizard working as a private eye. The appeal of the blue-collar wizard. Harry Dresden stands out because he pairs immense magical talent with a complicated moral compass and a deeply relatable personality. Far from a flawless or invincible mage, he frequently deals with money troubles, sustains real injuries, and grapples with his own poor choices.
And again, he frequently puts his foot directly in his mouth because the man is an idiot with a running mouth syndrome. He will mouth off to just about anything. And in that regard, this is somewhat fitting for the character. But one, I should think that if someone delusional and schizophrenic would become convinced that they were Harry Dresden, wouldn't they be in Chicago? Because Harry's stomping grounds and the main setting of the series is Chicago. I am confused as to how somebody in fucking California got it into their heads, however delusional they are, that they're Harry Dresden. Moving on.
Harry Dresden stands out because he pairs immense magic. I read that.
Yeah.
His arsenal includes distinctive magical gear such as enchanted rings designed to hold power, according to the Dresden Files fandom site. These items are rings which are enchanted to store a small fraction of kinetic energy into them at all times. The mix of grounded realism and otherworldly strength is why so many readers resonate with him. He's effectively a blue-collar mage navigating a treacherous secret society while attempting to maintain his ethics.
He's
Interestingly,
also a complete and utter dork. He knows it. Most of his allies know it. Most of his enemies know it. Harry Dresden, gods love him, but he's a dork. A dork who desperately needs to learn restraint and a sense of perspective. Which, again, to be fair, insofar as this guy thinks he is Harry Dresden, that part at least does feel a little bit Dresden to me. Tries desperately to be a badass, cannot do so, and thus fucked. I hope somebody
Dalton,
had the foresight to see if this guy has any like outstanding medical conditions, because one does not simply find oneself idealizing Harry Dresden out of nowhere.
okay. Interestingly, the fictional wizard is known for his signature long coat, much like the black one Jason wore when he appeared at the residence. Legal fallout and serious allegations. 30-year-old is being held at Solano County Jail while records indicate Nichols faces charges of first-degree burglary, vandalism, terrorizing an assault with a deadly weapon resulting in serious injury. With bail set at $35,000, he is due back in court on April 13th.
Is this his own? Is this his only crime? Is this the only major thing on his criminal record?
If it is, I don't know, man. I'm just reading it.
Right, but like that's the question that pops into my mind, because typically if someone is this deep in the schizophrenia rabbit hole, um they're known for this kind of violent outburst. So I'd be very surprised if this was his first time doing a violent outburst, if he has either dissociative identity disorder or schizophrenia or schizotypal personality disorder or any of the other
Dalton,
stuff that might lead to him thinking he was Harry. Moving on.
Within the world of Dresden Files, Water Magic involves much more than impressive displays. It carries strict regulations and heavy prices. The most perilous path is black magic, a practice where supernatural forces are exploited to injure or dominate other people.
I don't feel like that needed to be explained. Most people have an onboard understanding of black magic similar to that, I should think. Like maybe this is me being biased because I
Dalton,
have, decades of magical experience and shit, but is that not the normie understanding of what black magic is? Am I that out of touch?
I mean, I would assume so, but you never know. Also, dude, I'm like tired. I need to get to bed as soon as possible, so
Yeah, sorry.
you're good. Hey, if anything, we might just put the last stuff we have here for tomorrow. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Okay. Blurring the lines between fantasy and reality, protagonist has a complex history with these dark arts, though he works under a code that bans such practices. He frequently enters morally ambiguous territories when the stakes are high. This internal conflict between his ethics and the demands of the moment gives him significant depth. As the
Okay,
book's
I appreciate the ad for Dresden Files, because Dresden Files is awesome. It is by far and away my favorite book series. But what does this have to do with the guy? I want to know more about the guy and his obvious mental disorders and his history.
As Brooks examines the corrupting nature of power, he balances precariously between being a savior and an anti-hero, offering a narrative that is far more nuanced than a simple battle of good against evil. Whether the Fairfield incident was a case of mistaken identity, a mental health crisis, or a bizarre tribute to Jim Butcher's work remains unclear. However, the striking similarities, from the long black coat to the specific name and the desperate search for a missing girl, have made it impossible for the public not to draw parallels between the viral footage and the fictional wizard.
Well, yes, but like, expound on those connections, please. I want to know how. I want basically the fucking Taxi Driver falling down or King of Comedy backstory of this dude, because clearly this dude is having some kind of break with sanity. The question is how he got there, what does it mean, and are people actually are people actually going to help him? Like, is he going to get mental health for this?
As the legal case against Nichols moves forward, the internet continues to peel back the layers of this unsettling crossover between a gritty urban fantasy and a very real Californian doorstep.
I still find it baffling that dude thinks he's Harry Justin, but in California rather than like Chicago or the Midwest.
Okay, so with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidazai, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and fuck off.